Back in October 2015, I showed you guys the first chapter of what has quickly become known as the 10th Gen Civic. Now, nearly 2 years later, we're finally at the end of one long book. Welcome to the final chapter, Honda's vision for the ultimate expression in sport performance. Which is why I'm standing out here in the middle of a racetrack. I'm at the iCar circuit just outside of beautiful Montreal, Canada. And we're gonna find out if this forbidden piece of Type R fruit has been worth the wait.
That rev match is nice, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it makes it so you don't have to think. I talk about the forbidden fruit because North America has never seen a Type R model. In fact, the last time the Type R badge graced our shores, it wore an Acura badge from 1997 to 2001. So when Honda first announced that the Type R would be coming stateside on this 10th Gen Civic, the enthusiast market let out a cheer that could be heard from across the country. And here it is, the 2017 Civic Type R. This one even painted in the heritage color known as Championship White. Now, if you guys follow the Type R history, you'll know that Championship White signifies the first time Honda ever won F1 racing back in 1965. This is a unique color for the Type R. So you can see with this all-new model, Honda's stuck with a lot of the traditional styling elements. The first one you're going to notice, obviously, the red Honda badge. Only Type R models get the red badge. There's also a small little Type R badge in the grille. But thankfully, Honda also brought this car into the 21st century. It has a lot of modern premium elements. All Type Rs will come in a well-equipped touring trim, which means you'll get standard full LED headlights, LED turn signals, LED daytime running lights, LED low and high beams. You also get standard LED fog lights, which definitely make this car a premium looking car at night. It signifies the fact that this is the hierarchy of the Civic lineup. The rest of the front fascia, definitely very aggressive. Some have even criticized it for being overstyled. However, I think this car is bold. It needs to be overstyled. It's a Type R, it needs to stand out. You have this carbon fiber accented lip spoiler, some red accents. The whole bodywork in the front, the sides, the rear, they're all functional. It all adds to making this car slip through the wind. It also helps push the car onto the road because, as you guys know, Type Rs are supposed to be track-ready vehicles. Now, the hood, it is an aluminum hood. It saves about 12 pounds versus a steel hood. And the hood scoop here, it's functional. It feeds air into the intercooler, which helps cool down the 2-liter turbocharged engine. Now, if you want to follow me over to the sides, you're going to notice one thing that will catch your eye immediately, these massive 20-inch wheels. These are standard on all Type Rs. They're wrapped in 245/30 series rubber on Continental summer tires. And then the brakes behind those wheels, massive brakes. These are 13.8-inch cross-drilled and vented rotors. If you're keeping score, that's about 3 inches larger than what you get in a garden variety Civic that your neighbor owns. And they're all clamped down by Brembo 4-piston brakes with high-friction, high-performance pads. Remember, this is supposed to be a track-ready vehicle. Now, the rest of the profile of the Type R, this car only comes as a hatchback, as you guys know. It's built in the same assembly plant in England as the other hatch models. And the car itself is actually bigger than a standard hatch. The overall length is about 1.5 inches longer because of the front and rear bodywork. But really, what you're going to notice the most is the fact that this car is significantly wider, about 3 inches wider than a standard Civic. That's because of these puffed out fenders, the larger wheels and tires, which are significantly wider. Now, a couple things you're also going to notice here. Functional air vents here to help with cooling the engine and the brakes. The side skirt also has the same carbon fiber accents with the red accents. It all makes this car very cohesive. All the design elements are, reminiscent of the front, the sides, and the rear. It all works together fairly well. Now, when you come around the back of the Type R, it's equally polarizing, and it has the same kind of in-your-face design elements as the front. Obviously, the first thing you're going to notice, the gigantic wing. Now, this is not just any wing for those riced-out Civics. It's actually a functional wing. It adds downforce when you're at speeds, which is important. And surprisingly, I didn't find the wing got in my way when I was actually driving the car. Now, as I said earlier, this car only comes in a hatch configuration. There's no sedan, there's no coupe, which is exactly how it should be. The taillights, they're the same taillights on other Civics, LED accented, not full LEDs like the front. You're going to have the signature Type R badge, the red Honda emblem. And then, of course, when you come down here, Type Rs need to have an aggressive sound, and this is where Honda spent a lot of time working on. You have triple exhaust outlets. Now, the outer exhaust it's a low restriction, high flow exhaust. The center is actually a resonator. It's all there to amplify the noise from the low to mid RPM, and then it's supposed to cut out those drones you get at higher RPM. The rest of the underbody, you can see, matches out of the front, carbon fiber accents with the red. It looks very aggressive, it looks very menacing, and I think it'll definitely be a car that stands out, especially in the brighter colors that Honda offers it in. Now, being only a hatchback, you're probably wondering, how's the cargo area? And Honda is proud to point out that this car has the most space in the class with the seats up. You're looking at around 25.6 cubic feet of space. Now, if you want to fold down these seats, the car gives you about 46 cubic feet of space. Now, if you're keeping count, that's more than what you get in a Focus RS and a Subaru STI, but a little bit less than the Golf R gives you. Now, underneath the floor here, there is no spare tire. Instead, you just get a fix-a-fly kit. Remember, this is a track car, and we don't want some spare tire adding weight to the rear of your Civic Type R. As with any Type R, what's going on underneath the hood is the most important factor. And this is where the Type R has a completely unique engine. Now, unlike the SI, the Type R does get VTEC and it does get turbo. This is a 2-liter, so it's a bigger motor, double overhead cam, direct injection, iVTEC on the exhaust. It has VTC on the intake as well and the exhaust. And the numbers are pretty impressive. It makes 306 horsepower at about 6,500 RPM, about 295 pound-feet of torque between 2,500 to 4,500 RPM. Now, if you're keeping score, this actually makes the Type R the second most powerful in this segment. The RS is the only one that surpasses it. It has 1 more horsepower than the Subaru STI. Now, it all goes out through a 6-speed manual. That's the only choice. This is a manual-only club. It all goes out through the front wheels, boo, but it does have a limited slip differential. It has a dual-axis suspension to counteract torque steer. We'll go out in the test drive later and we'll talk about that. But fuel economy is actually not bad. It's rated at 22 in the city, 28 in the highway. Please put premium gas in it, which is roughly matching that of a Golf R, way more efficient than an RS or a Subaru STI. Now, the Type R is lighter because it is not all-wheel drive. It weighs around 3,100 pounds, about 300 pounds less than its all-wheel drive competitors. So Honda says you don't need the all-wheel drive out on the track. We'll go out into the track later on, and I'll show you guys if that's seriously the case. Just like any car, the inside of the Type R is going to be a very important aspect. This is where you're going to be spending the majority of your time. Now, first of all, every Type R will come standard with the smart key access system with push-button start. No remote start. This is a stick shift, of course. But when you start the vehicle up, you're probably wondering, how does it sound at first? Now, because it's push-button start, all you have to do is just put the clutch in, keep the key inside the vehicle. Let me turn off the air conditioning and let's hear it really quick. Unfortunately, it's limited to around 3,500 RPM, but you can actually hear the blow-off valve, and it has that nice deep growl that the SI didn't have that I was kind of disappointed by. Now, when you shut the door, it sounds nice and solid, just like all the other Civic platforms. Now, looking at the rest of this interior, it has a lot of elements in it that differentiate it from a standard Civic. The first thing I'm going to notice are these seats. These are specific to the Type R. They are not Recaro. They're a Honda-designed, very aggressively bolstered race seat. And you even have these little slots here for an aftermarket racing harness that you can easily retrofit if you guys decide to take this to the track. The bolster is aggressive. I love the fact that it's made of Alcantara. It's not cloth, so I'm not going to complain complain about the fact that Honda doesn't offer leather in the Type R because I like this material a lot. They did, however, take out heated seats, which is what you got in an EX Civic or an SI, so I will kind of complain a little bit about that. Now, the rest of this interior, you can see nice red accents found throughout. There's the same kind of stitching, faux stitching with the soft touch materials here on the upper part, and it just looks and feels special. But really the thing that catches my eye the most, beside the seats, is this new steering wheel. It's a flat bottom steering wheel with the nice red. It's got the red Honda emblem. The stitching feels nice, and the rim is also thicker. It's even thicker than what you get in the SI, to kind of just remind you you have the special Honda. Now, looking at the door panels here, it's the same soft touch material from the upper part of the dash. You have more of that carbon fiber look accent with the red. The windows are one touch for just the front. The rears are not one touch like you get in the front windows. And when you look at the center stack here, you get the premium head unit. Now, it's the same head unit you find in a touring Civic, so you actually have full navigation. You have Android Auto and CarPlay. When you go to the home screen here, you can see here, go to the navigation. It gives you the newest version of, the Honda map system, where it's kind of a Garmin-based system. It looks a lot better versus the old one, and I like the fact that Honda made nav standard. Now, as you saw earlier, it's got Honda Link, so it's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. The touch response is good. I'm not going to go too much in depth with this since you guys know. Now, one thing I do want to talk about really quickly is when you go to settings here, there is no driver assistance on this car. Honda took that out when they basically made this a Type R. There's no Honda Lane Watch as well. However, when you go to like the vehicle systems here in settings, there's a driver system setup here. When you do that, it actually turns on the automatic rev match system, which I actually will leave on for most of the test drive. It actually is the first production Honda to get automatic rev matching, so that's something I really want to go over later on in the video. Now, when you put the vehicle in reverse, you also get a backup camera as standard. It's got the 3 views. There's no parking sensors, so you guys saw those little indents for sensors on the back. They're actually not there. They took it out to save weight on this car. Now, one choice only on the transmission, 6-speed manual. It's got a nice metal shift ball to kind of show that this is a Type R. The throws are super short. This is the best shifting Honda transmission, modern one, that I've driven so far. It's just a really great transmission that if you guys have to drive stick, this is the one you want to be it in. Now, the rest of the center console controls here, all Type Rs will have a unique placard to show the rarity of this car. This one is number 468 off the production line. So again, make sure you guys make a note of that if you actually decide to buy this car. This controls the drive mode selector. It will always default to sport when you start it up. Push it down, it goes into a comfort. Push it up, it goes into R+, which is basically like a track mode. It makes everything much more visceral. The ride gets firmer, the steering gets harsher, and then the exhaust noise gets a little bit more pronounced. The center console here, the same stuff you find in the SI basically. It's nice and Alcantara padded. This adjusts. It's got deep cup holders here. You have USB ports down here and then back here for the Apple CarPlay. And overall, the Type R's interior certainly feels like it's up there in the hierarchy lineup. The only thing you're missing is there's no sunroof because, again, that adds weight, lowers the center of gravity, and the Type R is only a 4-seater. That's always been a Type R tradition. There's no actual center seat like there are in the regular Civics. So this class of vehicle is supposed to be a practical vehicle when you need it to be, and this is where the Type R also excels. This is still a Civic, so when you shut the door, the back seat actually has a pretty good amount of leg room. There's good foot space underneath here. I am noticing the front seats, because they're not quite as sculpted, it does take a little bit into your knee room, but this is still a relatively comfortable car for 2 people. Now, speaking of which, as I mentioned earlier, there's no center seat here. Honda replaced it with this little area here for cup holders and some storage, and they took away the center seat belt. Now, I forgot to mention the seat belts, because red seat belts, they're standard on the Type R, even on the back. Usually, auto manufacturers like Porsche charge like $800 for just red seat belts. And another thing I want to talk about really quickly, the back seat is actually only cloth. They didn't extend the Alcantara from the front, so it almost seems like Honda kind of gypped you a little bit. There's no actual armrest that folds down here. The headrests don't adjust. But again, I imagine you're not going to put your friends back here and take it to the track, because these seats don't exactly hold you in place. You're going to probably be hitting the passengers or rolling around back here if your friend decides to go out on the track and put you in the back seat. But overall, not bad. Good headspace, good legroom. For shorter trips for 2 people, this would be just fine. It's not every day that you actually get to drive a car out on a racetrack. Now, keep in mind, guys, I'm not a professional race car driver, so please try not to judge my driving too harshly. But I figured since I had an empty track, a 2017 Civic Type R, I figured I'd show you guys a couple of parts of this car when I go around some corners a little bit hot. I don't have access to the whole track, but we're gonna see how this car handles, since Honda likes to tout this up as a track car. So of course I'm going to start it off in our plus mode, which kind of puts the stability control in a less intrusive setting, turns off the traction control, and we're going to see how it does. Now the brakes on the Type R are really good, and this car turns in so sharply for a front-wheel drive car, it surprised me. And the thing grips so well, it's totally surprising. No, seriously, so you guys are complaining about the lack of all-wheel drive. The Type R on a track may actually convince you that you may not need it because it feels super lightweight, and because it has that limited slip diff and the dual axis front suspension, I don't feel any torque steer, especially there are times where I had it in third and second and I floored it. It really puts the power down well. Now, one thing I also really wanted to show you quickly, Honda says this car has launch control. Now, they were quick to point out that it's not the kind of launch control that you're going to find on a Focus RS where you can literally do like a 5,000 RPM clutch dump. Instead, what it does, you put it into R plus mode, you turn off the traction control, and you put the clutch in first, with the clutch still in, rev the engine out. It'll hold the revs at around 3,500 RPM, which Honda says is the ideal spot for the torque curve for this thing to actually, put the power down. It is front-wheel drive, remember, but as soon as you just let off the clutch, it should take off. So let's briefly see the launch control. Clutch in, first gear, and then let the clutch out. You can see the car struggles a little bit to put the power down, but again, I didn't feel any torque steer, which is surprising. Now, earlier today I mentioned the back seat in this car didn't exactly hold you in place well. As you can see, I've got my camera guy in the back, and he's probably not happy with me right now because I'm going around this track, and he, as you can see, is being thrown around. Sorry, piece, but we're gonna go around the track, this turn here, but the car is a really great track car. If you guys actually plan to drive this car on the track, the seats, the front seats are really where you want to be. They just hold you in place incredibly well. And they're super comfortable, super supportive, but let's try going around some corners one more time in the 2017 Civic Type R. What really is amazing about the Type R is the back end actually will step out if you go a little too hot. And when a front-wheel drive car does that, that really makes me happy. It almost has the characteristic of a rear drive car, but you can see here, the car pulls very hardly, and you see high speeds really quickly, but thankfully this car has amazing brakes. This is seriously, it's got that specialness, that performance that I was looking for in the SI that was missing, and this is really the one you need to get if you guys plan to track this car on a regular basis. So track driving is fun, but most of you who buy a Type R probably spend most of your time out on the street. So when you get the Type R out in these conditions, how does it do? Well, the first thing I want to show you guys, obviously, is how the turbo engine performs. This is the first time we're seeing the 2-liter turbocharged motor here. It's got a half-liter more displacement than the SI. It's got 23 pounds of boost, 306 horsepower to the front wheels, makes this the most powerful front-wheel drive car I've ever driven. So let's see if it's able to put that power down on the street as it was on the track. Oh, holy crap! This thing definitely has that mid-range grunt that I was looking for. Holy smokes! At 3,500 RPM, it just takes off. Oh! And listen to that noise it makes. This is the noise that I was looking for in the SI that was just annoyingly absent. This is one seriously fast car. Whew. And you know what? I don't really feel the torque steer. You do have a little bit of wheel hop, but honestly, this car puts the power down well for something that is seriously just front-wheel drive. Holy crap, this is good. And because this motor has VTEC, you know, it is hard to hear the VTEC when it does engage. I feel it slightly at like 5,000 RPM, but it's not quite as noticeable as, you know, older Hondas, those screaming motors. I mean, this thing will pull all the way up to its 7,000 RPM Redline, and I really love the rev match function. I mean, this is the first time Honda has done a rev matching system, and it doesn't actually rev match into first. That was one thing that I just noticed, actually. But when you put the power down, slight wiggle of the wheel, but it's nothing like the torque steer that you experience in the Mazda Speed 3, the old one, or the Focus RS. This is just one seriously, ridiculously fast car. Now, there isn't too much test data yet. Actually, there's no test data, really. Honda of Europe says this car will get to 60 in like 5.7 seconds, which is pretty slow by this class, but Honda will always tell you it's more about the feel than it is about the numbers. And this car, to me, feels like a around a 5-second car, mid 5-second car. It definitely pulls hard. Now, you're gonna lose a drag race to like an RS, maybe a Golf R and an STI because this car isn't all-wheel drive. But you know, honestly, this mid-range power, it's got so much low-end torque. I've never felt that before in a factory Honda. The torque is just delicious. It definitely gives you that pull, and you even have a little bit of that VTEC snarl. Now, let's talk a little bit about the exhaust noise, because this car doesn't have an active exhaust like it does, like, you know, the RS does. So there's no farts, there's no crackles from the exhaust that you would get in another car, or like the RS. But that resonator definitely makes this car sound pretty nice. And when you're at highway speeds, I put it in 6th gear here, you don't really get that drone that some cars have gotten, for sure. It has a nice muted growl, even then when you guys are at highway speeds. Now, I have the car in R Plus mode now, and some of you have mentioned, how does the car ride when it's R Plus? Now, first of all, it's pretty loud in here. These are fairly aggressive tires. So you're gonna be dealing with the road noise and the tire noise. I'm gonna reserve my full judgment until I actually drive this car out, you know, on the road, back in DC. However, I am noticing that the noise is pretty high. The ride quality, surprisingly, in R Plus is not as harsh as I was expecting it to be. I was expecting it to be really, really bad. But you know what? I could daily drive this. It's not as harsh as the last Focus RS I drove when it was in normal setting, and it's about on par with what you get in an STI. Now, let's switch the mode here to comfort. Now, first of all, when you go into comfort mode, you'll notice that the steering gets incredibly light. It's still really direct, but the effort has just gone down significantly. But when you go back to R+, this is seriously one of the quickest ratio steerings I've ever felt in a Honda. The dartiness of it, like, look at this. It reminds me of the Giulia QV that I had a couple weeks ago with the chassis, the suspension. It's one seriously wonderful handling car that you're gonna love to push. Oh, that's right. Listen to that noise it makes. This is one seriously fun car to drive on a daily basis. I am impressed with the way this car accelerates. I just wish that the SI drove like this when I first drove it, because I was truly disappointed with the SI. You Honda guys who are looking for a fast car, this is the model that you want. The Type R is definitely the car that you want to get. Now, let's just go into regular sport mode here. And this is where the car has a nice balance, because the steering isn't quite as light as when it's in comfort, not quite as heavy as when it's in R+, but you can see the ride is really nicely controlled. Now, I did take this car on some pretty bad, crappy pavement, and I found the ride quality to be really harsh on rough roads, which didn't really surprise me. This is still a, you know, high-performance hot hatch. But, you know, on these normal roads that most people are going to encounter, the ride quality is surprisingly supple for what this is. Oh my God, and one thing about this car, with all that bodywork and aero bits, it has incredible stability at high speeds. Now, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, it's got some vortex generators on the rear, kind of like what the Mitsubishi Evo MR used to have. And you really feel this car has a planted feel to the road. I mean, at high speeds, there are times where you're going like 80 miles an hour, it feels like you're going 50 miles an hour. That's kind of the problem with a lot of modern cars that are fast. The Type R has that same problem, which is a good problem, but honestly, it's gonna get a lot of people some speeding tickets. But when you're driving the car normally, I'll put it into 6th gear here, put it into comfort. I could daily drive this thing easily. The seats are really nice. On the track, they're wonderful. And when you get it out on the road here, they're supple, they're supportive, they hold you in place nicely. I love the Alcantara. It feels very high quality, very expensive. And there really isn't much to complain about. The visibility in here is good. You have that nice view of the hood scoop right there to remind you you're in the Type R. Great side mirrors. Now the Type R doesn't have any driver assistance tech, which is fine by me. It doesn't even have the lane watch. Honda got rid of that. I kind of wish that maybe they offered like blind spot monitoring, but Honda Sensing, don't expect to find that here because you only get a one choice only 6-speed manual, which by the way, if you're gonna have a manual, it better be a good manual. And this is one damn good manual transmission. One of the best shifting modern Hondas I've ever driven. Really light, short throw shifter, nice slick feel through the gates. The clutch is also very equally light. The rev matching system, even in comfort, works really well. It makes you basically a pro. It's a very smooth driving car. So the harshness that I was talking about, that I was complaining about in the RS, it's just kind of gone in the Type R. And ultimately, this is an easier car to live with on a day-to-day basis for me, especially if you guys don't need the all-wheel drive. As I showed you on the track, the all-wheel drive is not necessarily needed. I mean, this is a very light feeling car. I mean, yes, there is a little bit of wheel hop. I mean, that's expected. Slight torque steer on certain road conditions. If the road's not perfectly smooth, you're turning the wheel, of course you're gonna feel it dart a little bit, but honestly, it's a very mild amount of torque steer considering this car has 306 horses to the front wheels. Could Honda have added all-wheel drive? Sure. However, the Type R has always been front-wheel drive. It's always been the best performing front-wheel drive car that Honda knows how to build, and that's exactly what they've captured with this all-new 10th generation model. North America has certainly waited a long time for another Type R badged Honda to grace our shores. Thankfully, this new model appears to have been worth the wait. As you saw out on the track, the lack of all-wheel drive really doesn't hurt the Type R much, with its mechanical limited slip diff and dual-axis front suspension helping to put that power to the pavement. Out on the road, the Type R equally excels as a street car with a ride quality that's only slightly firmer than your neighbor's Civic when left in comfort, but the power and ferocity of a sports car when R+ mode is selected. That brings me to the last aspect of the Type R, the price. When this model goes on sale tomorrow, that's June 15th, it will start at $33,900. Now that's exactly $10,000 more than what you're gonna spend on a Civic Si. Is it worth it? If you have the money, I say hell yes. This car has the power and pull that was seriously lacking in the Si, but it manages to undercut its all-wheel drive competitors by as much as $7,000. With the 2017 Type R finally back in the States, I can confidently say that Honda is back, and back with a vengeance. I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this car. If you're looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you all in the next video.